Now we discuss banning mobile phones in schools and some quite surprising research which we need to get to the bottom of, which is by the University of Birmingham, and suggests that if you ban mobile phones, it doesn't necessarily lead to pupils getting better grades or having improved mental well-being. There's a big rider to this I'm going to give you in a second, but the academics looked at more than 1,200 students, so it was a serious study. They found their sleep, their classroom behaviour, their exercise levels, etc., and even the amount of time they spend on the phones overall wasn't any different from those who went to school with no phone ban. The report's lead author, Dr. Victoria Goodyear, said the findings don't mean that school smartphone bans are wrong. They actually show that more needs to be done to keep children off their phones out of school too. The research found that the more time children spent on phones and social media, the worse their mental health, the worse their physical activity, their sleep, their grades and behaviour. So this is a very confusing finding here because the headline is different from the body of it. And we're going to talk to Dr. Victoria Goodyear herself, the Associate Professor at the University of Birmingham, who can help us to understand. Good afternoon.
Hi there.
So the headline has gone, banning mobile phones in schools makes no difference, but actually it's almost the opposite.
Well, what the finding tells us is that school phone bans are not enough to tackle the negative impacts of smartphone and social media use. So as you said, that we didn't see any difference in outcomes for pupils that attend a school with a phone ban and without a phone ban. And one explanation for that is that school phone bans don't lower the overall time adolescents spend on their phones. They lower in-school use, but that's by quite a small amount. It's only by 40 minutes on phones, 30 minutes on social media. And when we look at their overall use, the young people are spending 4 to 6 hours on their phones a day or 2 to 4 hours on social media a day.
I see. So they make up, if they are banned at school, they tend to use them more at home, do they?
Well, it basically shows that the phone bans are only having a small amount of change in that overall use. So you're using it for 4 to 6 hours, and a phone ban is really going to only reduce that by 40 minutes, and that's quite a small amount in terms of that overall use.
4 to 6 hours a day, that is, I won't use the word mental, that seems mad. I mean, crazy. It's just so much time, and it must go into their sleeping time as well.
Well, I think that's one of the implications of this study is that we need to, what the study does show is those negative associations between more time you spend on your phone and worse outcomes. And one of those outcomes is sleep and its physical activity. And so we need to think about how phone use connects with the wider aspects of adolescents' health and well-being. And, you know, if there is a lack of sleep taking place, then we need to consider that as well as working on school phone policies in schools.
All right, if I'm a head teacher looking at this, I could say, right, I was right not to bring in a phone ban because we are like King Canute fighting the tide. There is no point, and schools might as well allow phone use whenever and wherever.
I think schools are working hard to support adolescents' mental health and well-being. I think they're also working hard to address phone use. Schools are using different approaches. The majority of schools in the UK have a phone ban in place. I think what this study shows is that when we look at the outcomes in terms of mental health and well-being, physical activity, sleep, behaviour and attainment, a school phone ban alone is not enough to deal with those issues. And we know that schools are doing other things as well. So that's a really important consideration, is that this is just looking at the phone policies.
The key bit of your report seems to be the negative effects of the phones on the students. And is that bottomed out? And I say that because just today we've got a story that the mental health of young people, their anxiety levels is just off the scale.
Yeah, this study does contribute to a growing evidence base about the associations between social media and phones on mental health outcomes. It's one of the most current studies. It's from a nationally representative cohort of adolescents. It's a large sample. We've looked at those associations and tried to unpack those differences in relation to various factors, so sex, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and we still find this trend in the pattern. I think what this study shows is it's a stepping stone. We need to do more. We need to find more evidence, and we need to have evidence-informed policy making.
Okay, can you help us understand what is making people who use phones 4 to 6 hours a day stressed, unhappy and anxious? What's the connection?
We didn't look at that connection specifically in this part of this
Can
study.
you guess?
Well, I mean, they're using their phones a lot. What we also found was in this study was an increase in problematic use, and problematic use associated with outcomes has been shown to, so they're preoccupied by what's going on social media, or there's compulsive behavior. So that could be a factor in that, and we did measure that in this study. So I think, there is this trend, it's time, and in this study we looked at well-being, anxiety and depression in relation to mental health, and we can say that time is a key factor in that relationship.
All right, fascinating. Thank you so much, Victoria. Associate Professor at the University of Birmingham, Dr. Victoria Goodyear. Listening to that, Jane Gandy, Headmistress at St Swithin's Girls' School in Winchester. You have a phone ban, Jane, I understand?
That's absolutely right. We used Yonder pouches for years 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11.
So what pouches?
So they're called Yonder, and what happens is that when the students come into school in the morning, they turn their phones off, they put them in these pouches. The pouches are then shut with a very strong magnet, and they can't be unlocked until the end of the school day when they go past this sort of unlocking station.
Right, and you find that works in terms of school use, do you?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we've definitely seen a difference in the way that the students behave in the afternoon. And I say that because last academic year, we used to take in the phones in the morning and give them back in afternoon registration. And then we would see the girls go into class. And sometimes we could really see the way their mood had changed. After checking on social media, they would be kind of excited because there's some drama, or they might be kind of a bit miserable because they'd seen something that made them a bit anxious. And so that has now gone. And that feels a much kind of better atmosphere for afternoon lessons.
Yeah, I suppose the problem now we have from this report is that it's just an infinitesimal change because it's home. It's home where it all happens, and you probably knew that.
I think that's true, but I think a couple of things really. One, by having this kind of stricter rule about putting the phones in the pouches, it sends messages to the girls themselves, but also I think it helps the parents. The parents are starting to feel a little bit more empowered, and I know that's the case because with our Year 7 parents, because they knew that we were going to put these Yonder pouches into effect, some of them didn't buy their children smartphones because it kind of made them feel, actually, we can say no, because they were worried about the impact of smartphones. And then, therefore, because they knew at school they wouldn't be able to use them anyway during the day, they said, no, we're going to wait and hold off giving them the smartphones.
Can you answer the question that I posed to the researcher, which is, what is it about turning a phone on that leads young people to have mental health problems?
I think that there are all sorts of even though we try and teach them that what they see on social media isn't necessarily true. If you see loads and loads and loads of pictures of really beautiful women, then it can sometimes, you question yourself and you question your sort of the way you look, and it makes you start to worry. Or you see loads and loads of things with other people with lots of friends, and you think, I haven't got as many friends. So it's those types of comparisons, I think, with unrealistic expectations, unrealistic standards, which are really unhelpful.
Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy your day, Jane. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Jane
Bye-bye.
Gandy, Headmistress at St Swithin's Girls' School in Winchester. They have a phone ban, and maybe, as Jane was saying, that if you show parents you can ban it, you give them the power to restrict the use in the child's spare time, except that it doesn't seem to be happening. And B, we were talking about this weird study. And I say weird because the headline is, it doesn't make any difference to kids if schools ban or don't ban phones. So your immediate thought is, let's let schools just allow pupils to do their own thing. But it's not that. It's that the school phone time is a tiny proportion, maybe 1/8 of the total phone time, which is at home. And tackling that has to be the key. And there we get into that real thicket, don't we, of what we as parents can do. Joanna, in France, you have a 10-year-old.
I do. I've got a 10-year-old who will be starting in Year 7 in September. And it's one of the things I'm really, really concerned about, because it doesn't matter what I do to protect my own child. I can not give her a smartphone. I can give her a simple phone so she can keep in contact with me after school if she needs to. But I'm at risk from all of the other phones that are going to be within that school. So they can't check for what children have parental controls on. So my child's at risk from any other phone that's on that premises. And there's a huge risk that she's going to be exposed to explicit material, really harmful content. And we know that social media companies are pushing out this harmful content to those young children.
Well, yes, but of course the risk is far greater from a phone she owns herself, because she can take it into a private place. At least if somebody is going to show her stuff, another pupil, then, they're probably not going to part with their phone for very long. But I wondered whether you were going to say it's really difficult to say my kid's the only one in class without a phone, because that's the real problem, isn't it?
It is, but that's why we're seeing a really huge increase in parents who are giving their children simple phones. We often forget that simple phones still exist for children. There are really modern versions of them now, and it offers them the same protection. If they're worried about the school run, if they're worried about being on the bus, they've got that ability to have contact with children, but without giving them the kind of the addictive side of the internet and giving them that need to be constantly on it.
Yeah, I was looking up models for my mum, and I saw, and I'm sure there are others available, but the Nokia 3310 seems to be the classic brick phone, as they call them, and they've started making them again, and they're just very, very simple.
There's some really, really brilliant alternatives. And I think once parents realise that there is an alternative and we can still have the benefits of having that contact, we can all club together and unite as parents and go, do you know what, we won't be the only child in the school that hasn't got a smartphone because their friends haven't. And that's what we've really found, is that power of coming together as parents and saying, look, there are some great benefits of having a phone. If they want to keep in touch after school clubs, if something gets cancelled, they can still do that. But it just really takes away that kind of peer pressure to constantly be in touch with each other, constantly be that fear of missing out, which is what I'm seeing in our older children. Is if they're not in constant contact, they're feeling they're going to miss out on something. And, they're trying to either eat dinner as well as being on their phone. And we're looking at the screen from the older ones and thinking, we've really got to bring this down.
I wonder what the worst age is for the phone generation, because I think the people who are being born now will not have the same issues, because they will have really sorted out the social media violence. And I wonder whether it's kids who are now about 15.
I don't think we're on track for that for a long time.
You don't think so?
We've got a long way to go. I mean, the new phone bill that's coming out, it's pretty weak at the moment. We've got so much further to go until we really get to grips with that. So I think, we need to take collective action now. And the results that are coming back from schools that have put and implemented a phone ban in, you've got the John Wallace Parliament School, who are 82% reduction in detention.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Joanna. Katie Moore in Northampton, do you agree with Joanna?
I completely agree. She's literally said everything I would have said. I would really welcome support from schools. I think the study that's come out today, if you actually look at the details of the study, it goes as far as to say schools alone are not enough to sort of tackle the negative impact that is currently happening to our children.
Yeah. Well, that's what the study, that's what we're discussing. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. And the fact that not to be seen or heard policies were about a good 2/3, if not more, sort of the total schools that represented that study. Not to be seen or heard policies mean that mobile phones are left in blazer pockets of school bags. When children are going off to the toilets, they've got an opportunity to do a little TikTok video, or when teachers aren't around, they can't police every corner of the school. Those smartphones are addictive by nature.
Yeah, well, we know this as adults, don't we, Katie? I mean, you know and I know, and we both, I'm sure you've got one, I've got one. Oh my goodness, you consulted the whole time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think schools need to really look at a smartphone as what it actually is. Is it a phone at all? Or is it actually a mini computer with a personal internet connection loaded with a high-quality camera, video recording capabilities?
Yeah.
Are these things that we should actually question? Are these guarding issues?
Okay, thank you very much indeed.